created to have some fun together, sharing and singing. So, join and enjoy.
Our love for opera brings us together. Thanks for being with us in this trip.
Hello, hello, and in today's program, today we're talking about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, a composer that everybody knows him as just Mozart, or people tend to think that they know about Mozart, but I would like to challenge you to really ask yourself how much is it really that we know about Mozart, and of those or that information that we think we have around him, how much of it could actually be true. That would be there will be a series of questions today. Remember that in this series we are asking ChatGPT in its 3.5 release to provide us some guidance on the composers, their styles, the characteristics for the voices that he composed for, and any other question that I think might be relevant to build a better understanding of the given composers. So today's Mozart's turn. And don't forget to send an email if you feel like doing it. operawillofsinging@gmail.com, operawillofsinging@gmail.com. And so, of course, I asking ChatGPT, as I have done in the previous programs, to first provide a summary of Mozart in 500 words. We have had in the past very uneven results depending on the composer that I have asked for. And let's start with ChatGPT's reply, and I will make a small pause here and you will see why. Mozart was born year 1756 and died year 1791. And I wanted to make a pause here because, first things first, year 1756, the most important or even recent events of history, of the human history, haven't even taken place, and if considering the 1800s. And I wanted to emphasize that because I would like to challenge you to think how much of the things we have read in a book, watched on a documentary, listened in a program, or maybe if you have had a chance of also watching videos either on TV or YouTube or any other media, how much of what is being explained, shared, can actually have some truth. We are talking of years when navigation was the main means of transport between the continents. You know how much it took to make a trip from Europe to the Americas. In those years, I would like to give you a very brief list of things that haven't even happened. And so, to keep in mind, to consider what haven't even happened in history, in terms of communication, the telegraph was invented in year 1833, almost 4 decades after Mozart had passed. If you are good at dates, then you know that the independence of the United States is year 1775. By then, Mozart had already been composing a good number of his creations. Not even the French Revolution had started. So, with those three, I would dare to say, key events of the recent, if we can say recent to this, that are older over 200 years. If not even that had happened, how can we dare to say that what we think is Mozart is what he actually was? And I will go back to that question often as we continue talking about Maestro Mozart. So, Born in 1756, no French Revolution, United States not independent, nor even the telegraph had been invented. He was born in Salzburg. You may all know about that. Salzburg is or has been in later years seen as a synonym of Mozart. So Mozart and Salzburg in Austria is are two words that are put together as if they had just one meaning. Of course, you already know that Mozart was identified as a genius in music. He could play, he could compose at a very early age. Of course, there are anecdotes that pretend that Mozart would be able to compose music at the age of 5. I have my doubts, and let me tell you why. At the age of 5, and it depends on the country you're listening to this program today, at the age of 5, usually people is in kindergarten. Who, one of you who are listening, whatever in the world you are listening to this program, who at that age was able to control the fine movements of your body? Were you able to jump, to write properly? And I think at this moment you would be willing to say, "Hey, that's why he was a genius, because he could compose at the age of 5." So I would like to challenge you with this question: is it really possible that a human being whose movements, whose motor abilities have not been fully developed, is really able to create something as in music? You would like to say that he was good at playing the piano, but I would like to challenge you again. Is it really true that at that age you are a master of your movements, so that you can say that you can play, if not to perfection, very well? Of course, you can say, "Hey, I saw a video of a guy, of a little boy, sorry, recently that is 7, 8, 9 years old and can play piano well." But remember that we are now talking about Mozart composing. What is it exactly that we mean when we say that he was composing? Was he even able to write? Are we sure the musical notation he was able to use is really what he did? Because if not, maybe we should ask ourselves, what is it exactly that we are saying when we are sure, when we are certain that Maestro Mozart was able to compose at 5? Are those sources that we are coming to reliable? Is it an exaggeration? Is it something that we are feeding only with the purpose of giving consistency to the myth? The myth that Mozart was able to compose music at the age of 5. Maybe he was trying melodies at the piano and he was doing it well, and that's where the myth started. He is composing music at the age of 5. Maybe years later, I am pretty certain that a person with the geniosity that seems to have been the case of Mozart would be able to play, and still I would have my doubts on the composition, because I didn't have the chance. I looked for it, but I didn't have the chance of watching an actual proof of a composition of him before he's 15 years old, him being 15 years old, because that would be proof and that would be material for people who study uh, music to read what was his writing in those very, very early years in terms of music theory. Also, you have to keep in mind that there's been evolution in styles. There's been evolution in the use of instruments. There's been even evolution on the number of hertz. Well, hertz is a very frequent, a very recent term. Years of Mozart, the term hertz or the number of cycles per second didn't even exist. So when the instruments were tuned, it's not the same tune that we have now for the A. Keeping all those things in mind, it would be very interesting to have access to such documents if they exist, because unless there is a manuscript copy that one people can be 100% sure that it is the actual reproduction of what was composed by Mozart, that we would be able to embrace with 100% certitude that that was what he did. And I don't want you to think that I would like to discredit Mozart, because of course Mozart is not someone to be discredited only because he lived well before many events in the recent history happened. But what I would like to point out is that maybe we are adding to the myth just because we like to think what it actually happens, when maybe that never actually happens. And the actual event is that he was, of course, a very gifted musician from very early age, and he was able to listen to music, to reproduce and play maybe in the piano what he listened, or started creating music, which is different to saying that he was an actual composer at the age of 5, right? So that was our first stop in the answer by ChatGPT, because here comes the note that he was actually composing music at the age of 5, and that he was an extraordinary violinist and keyboardist. The same thing for the violin. If you are an instrument player, then you know that a very early age, then you know that playing a violin is not an easy thing, and that at the age of 5, we are unable to control our body, because that is something that is developed throughout the years. Okay, then ChatGPT gave us more information about Maestro Mozart, who was a court musician in Salzburg. That is also a very well-known fact. The dates are not here very well established, but ChatGPT shares with us that he didn't feel fine there, and then he looked for a better place, and that's how he finally settled in Vienna, year 1781. If you recall that Maestro Mozart was born in 1756, and he arrived to Vienna in 1781, that means that he was barely 25 years old. He still was very young, because this will lead me to the second comment that I wanted to make, because that will be pertinent in the following comments. When it is said that Maestro Mozart, further discussion ahead, was emotionally unstable, that he acted as a child, that he was so immature. But think that if by the age of 25 he arrived to Vienna, that means that he was still a very young adolescent, a very young adult when he was in Salzburg. What did you expect from a boy 18, 20 years old in a very rigid culture in Salzburg, dealing with musicians who were double or maybe triple his age? Was it not natural that they saw him as immature, as excessively playful? Of course it was, and it was them who wrote the anecdotes and who wrote on the mood and character and life of Mozart. Of course it is going to be biased. So why are we pretending to say that we know about Mozart when we haven't even considered that he was too young, even arriving to Vienna in 25 years old? Even now, I mean, if you're still listening to this program, this is year 2023. If by now you look at people, young boys and girls, age of 25, don't you tell me that they are mature as if they were 40 or 50. So why do we keep, maybe second part of the myth, thinking that Maestro Mozart was just childish, when maybe it was part of the natural behavior of someone who is playful and young? And now comes a comment from ChatGPT that I think it's very important to remark. It says Mozart's opera is vast and varied, spanning every genre available in his time: symphonies, operas, chamber music, concertos, and sacred music. His ability to combine complex musical structures with unforgettable melodies made his works both intellectually challenging and immensely popular. Pieces like the Jupiter Symphony, Don Giovanni Opera, and Einklein Nacht music are just a few examples of his genius, and that is true. Opposed to what happens to other, and I hope I don't get too many enemies by saying this. Opposed to what happens with other composers, I mean, we all people know that Verdi is mainly an opera composer. Yes, he wrote the Requiem and he wrote a couple things here and there, but Verdi is an opera composer. Puccini, same case as in Verdi, is an opera composer. Rossini was also wrote some symphonias, but Rossini is mainly known for being very successful in opera. Wagner, the German master Wagner, is mainly a composer of operas. But as in the case of Mozart, being so prolific, his catalog is so extensive that it's not only extensive in operas, but is extensive in other music as chamber and concertos and symphonies, as we are going to recall again a little further. So, taking that into account, Maestro Mozart, of course, was a very gifted musician, a very talented creator who could manage to use music to compose whatever he felt like to. So, I think that if we are to adhere to something besides the myths the two other myths that I just commented, maybe we should still keep in mind that Maestro Mozart was very good in whatever he wanted to be doing. He composed very rapidly. Yes, we recently made the program on another very fast composer. That was the case of Rossini, and we will have later in this series the program for Maestro Donizetti, who was also a composer who composed very quickly. So should we be surprised or give more importance to the fact, to the anecdote that Mozart composed Don Giovanni in 2 weeks? Should we give it more importance when we know that Rossini achieved something very similar and Donizetti did? Is this a competition of who writes operas shorter? I think it is not. It is about the quality of the job. So I would take that fast composition perspective of Mozart just as that, as an anecdote. Rather than building on the geniosity, he was a genius because he could compose fast. Because we enter in a very absurd competition of who would compose faster. And I would like to insist, it is not a competition of who composes more pieces of music in less time. It is a matter of seeing what the quality of the result was, even, of course, we need to take into account the amount of time invested, but we also like to take a look into the quality of the result. If you look at Il Barbiere di Siviglia, composed very rapidly, and if you look at Don Giovanni, this monumental masterpiece by Mozart, of course the two are very great creations. Why should we stop in asking ourselves on how many pages per second wrote each of them when we have two monumental creations that have endured the past of years? Another comment by ChatGPT, next paragraph, tells us about the range of his compositions from a comedy, as in the marriage of Figaro, Le Nozze di Figaro, and the Magic Flute, to a more dramatic Don Giovanni. Redefine the genre with their depth of character portrayal and intricate ensembles. Here comes another very interesting, and I think that it is important also to mention, because ChatGPT shares with us that Mozart's personal life was fraught with financial troubles. And this is very important. This is something that I liked from ChatGPT. His tendency to live beyond his means and the inconsistent nature of his income often plunged his family into debt. That is because it is often said, and it is very well known for a fact, that Maestro Mozart died poor. And what we keep also in our minds is that Mozart also lived poorly. But it is different to say, and that would be myth number three, that Mozart was very poor and died very poor only because poverty was part of him, that he didn't make any success. But the note here gives us a different perspective. Mozart had a tendency to live beyond his means. And to this, I would like to bring you back to another comment that I made earlier. Maestro Mozart was very young, was an adolescent. When he arrived to Vienna, he was 25 years old. Year 2023, if not your case, maybe your son's. Tell me how many of them are very good at managing their finances. If if they still live with you, if they do not live with you anymore, but if they still live with you, how many of them would be able to make a good life, if not out of composition, out of whatever they know how to do at the age of 18, to provide an example? So maybe again, it is not that I tend to believe that, yeah, most of his life he had a very hard time trying to even get food for everyday's life, but it was the result of poor planning. Just think of a young man who finds himself very talented, who finds himself very optimistic on how he's going to make his life, but not everything results as he expects. He's just very young. He hasn't had enough exposure to life to mature, and there is people who is mature at least in number of years who are lousy financial planners of their life. So most likely true, he lived poorly, he died poor, but most likely, maybe, it's just because he was young. Why adding as part number four of the myth, as if it was, we tend to idolize people when we say, oh, he was poor and he created and he was fast and this and this and this, like building to the myth. And today, besides challenging the myth, I would like all of us to go through this program, to navigate this program, trying to put aside all those things that more likely are exaggerations or misunderstandings on the personality of Mozart, and let's stop this idolation of him as he was unhuman, when maybe Maestro Mozart was human as all of us are, but the myth was built later because we need someone to idolize. And instead of idolizing someone that maybe Mozart was not, maybe we should love him for what he actually was. And so far, my thoughts are still that he was just discovered very early that he was a very talented guy. Unfortunately, at least to the eyes of older people, he was immature, he was unable to manage his finances, he was very fast in writing, but none of that adds to the quality of him as a composer. None of that also degrades his quality as a composer. Maestro Mozart was a great composer for his own merit, whether he had or he didn't have money. So why investing so much time? It is like it makes me think of when we speak of Maria Callas, and instead of adhering to say uh, the great Norma she recorded live in La Scala with Mario del Monaco, why do we deviate from that and we always like to say, but even though she was married to Meneghini, she started dating Onassis. We all know for a fact that she was with him and that at the end she decided to almost leave all her operatic life for being with him. But that is, like just for watching TV and things that just don't add to the main subject. Maria Callas is an artist for everything she left us, and all the other things are just gossip. So far, from my perspective, 4 myths on the importance and the value of Maestro Mozart. I will not make any comment on the last paragraph by ChatGPT because it's only platitudes and platitudes and platitudes. I don't know why we humans have this undeniable tendency to write platitudes about so this unforgettable composer who gave us light and blah 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 blah. So that's when the second question that I like to ask ChatGPT is to provide us with a list in chronological order of Mozart. And I would like to mention something now. I will provide you the list of 19 opera compositions. Pay attention to that opera. We just mentioned earlier that we know that he composed more than operas. But notice that I am pretty sure that you will not be familiar with more than 5 names here. So we're then again adding to the myth, adding to the great number of his compositions when we cannot name more than 5. And there are reasons for that. They just don't hit in the repertory of music. I am not saying they are bad compositions, because if you know, there is also a poem by Maestro Leon Cavallo, but it's not even 100% close to the composition of Puccini, and it just didn't hit the taste of people who love opera. This would be the case for Mozart. Mozart is a repertory of specialty, and not everybody likes the other compositions less known to Mozart. Let's start. Bastien und Bastien. If you are also familiar with this term, compositions by Mozart are cataloged, and they are usually known as Kegel. So Bastien und Bastienne, Kegel 50, year 1768. La Finta Semplice, Kegel 51, 1768. Also notice that the first year of composition of his operas is year 1568. If he was born in year 1556, if you do the math from 56 to 78, that means 12 years. He was around 12 years when he published his first operas. La Finta Semplice, Mitridate Re di Ponto, year 1770. Again, I would like to insist in my comment earlier, the original manuscripts to understand what was actually composed, and now not what has been transferred, adapted to our current understanding of music. That would be very something that is worth investigating in the history of music. Ascanio in Alba, Il Sogno di Scipione, Lucio Silla, Thamos, King of Egypt. We have reached year 1773, La Finta Giardiniera. But so far, you may have already noticed that there are compositions in German and in English. Also, keep in mind that the German and the English in which these operas were composed were, if you allow me the expression, in older versions of the Italian and German language. Everybody knows languages evolve, so don't be surprised if you manage to have access to the actual compositions, creations by Mozart, and you notice that there are words that you don't know, even though you speak German or Italian. Il Re Pastore, Kegel 208, Zaide, an unfinished opera, 1780, Idomeneo Re di Creta, year 1781. And even though we are going to have a list a little ahead, because you know that I also like to ask on the most difficult arias by the composer, Uh, Talking about Idomeneo, Re di Creta, I noticed that ChatGPT does not mention Idomeneo, or not even one of his areas, of the areas in the opera, as a difficult one, with which I fully disagree. We will mention it a little ahead, but for the composition for the tenors and most of his highest sopranos are almost impossible to sing. We will talk a little more about the characteristics of the voice for singing Mozart, but that's why I can't understand why there is not mention to Idomeneo Re di Creta. Then we move to another opera that is not that well known, and we talk about the F-Rung aus dem Serail, the abduction from the Seraglio, KL 384, year 1782. Many people are not very aware of this opera, and even though it is not very well known, if you have already given you the chance of watching it, you know that the abduction from the Seraglio is a very, very lovely composition. If you ask me, I think I like it even more than the Magic Flute. The characters are lovely. The difficulty, this is the very first time that Mozart writes super high notes for his sopranos. Everybody knows about the Queen of the Night. I really invite you to go and check this abduction from the Seraglio and look at what was written for the role of Constance. Constance has a very, very interesting aria, and the complete role itself is so high, so interesting, so full with ornaments that you barely have the chance of meeting a soprano who can actually sing it. I would even dare to say that a soprano who sings the Queen of the Night may not be able to sing the role of Constance. But more important than that, at least from my perspective, is that in that same opera, the abduction from the Seraglio, Mozart not only has one high soprano, he has two very high sopranos. So it is not only the parts sung by Constance, but also their parts sung by Blondier. Same as in Constance, the quantity of fioriture, of high notes, of ornaments for this role are so difficult. Martin allen arten tarararan, tan tarararan, tarararan, tan tarararan, tan tarararan, tarararan. These are so difficult to sing that if finding one soprano who can sing Constance, now imagine finding two sopranos who can reach that height, that quality and brightness in the ornaments in the same opera production. That is so close to impossible that you can barely get away with a full representation of the abduction from the Seraglio and be satisfied with the result out of it. And now, the main male character is also so lovely that it reminds me of many parts by Maestro Donizetti, where the bass or the middle voices are the tyrants of the bad guys, but they are so lovely that one ends up loving them more than hating them, which was supposed to be the purpose from him being the villain. I really would like to invite you to go and watch for one recording of the abduction from the Seraglio and find out yourselves that maybe I'm not saying that you stop loving the Zauberflöte, the magic flute, but please give some room in your heart for the abduction from the Seraglio. Moving on with the catalog by Maestro Mozart, we go for La Oca del Cairo, Lo sposo deluso, the deluded bridegroom, year 1748. By this time, Mozart, when he composes Le Nozze di Figaro, the marriage of Figaro, it is year 1786. Why am I mentioning this 86? Because at this time he's already 30 years. One would still think that he is very young to be able to compose one opera with the quality and the level of maturity he does for Le Nozze di Figaro, but also keep in mind that by this time, also in his 30s, Maestro Rossini had already composed most of his greatest creations. Again, it is not that I am trying to say that Maestro Mozart's quality was not great, but I'm just trying to provide you more examples to realize that maybe we are exaggerating too much. We are over idolizing Maestro Mozart by adding things that do not need to be added. They are just qualities that were present in more than one composer. Does it rest quality to Le Nozze di Figaro? It does not. But just keep in mind, those times were so prolific to composers that more than one composer was able to complete a very mature opera, even if they were still very young in age. Of course, we have already, if you are following this series of programs in order, you have already heard our program about Le Nozze di Figaro, what I consider to be the criticism of Maestro Mozart towards the social situation, which makes him a very interesting character if you take into perspective that he was supposed to be selfish, immature, playful. It doesn't respond to the fact that he dared to portray the criticism in Le Nozze di Figaro. Of course, we talked about the incredible melodies there, such as Non piangerai farfallone amoroso, notte e giorno d'intorno girando, delle vele turbando il riposo, narcisetto dolcino da me. And I would like to mention, even though it's going to mention a little ahead, that because I explained it, I think I tried to explain it early in that program, and we also did it while recording with Katia, that singing Mozart is not an easy task. One of the things that I would like to remark about Maestro Mozart is his ability to write in such level of perfection. It's like watching a diamond when you listen to Maestro Mozart's music. Music is so perfectly written that when a singer or an instrumentalist fails, exaggerates, keeps notes for much longer, overdoes the volume, you immediately notice. You may never notice whenever you watch or listen to Verismo. No, you care more about the mezzo or the soprano getting away with the whole role than about whether she missed a note or exaggerated or overdid something. But when you sing Mozart, everything is perceived. You noticed that the singer is not doing what he should be doing. You notice when the singer loses the dynamics. And that leads us to the comment that Mozartian roles are roles that need excellent technicians in singing. There are not those many. I would like to mention just a couple of them. Of course, Dame Kirite Kanawa, one of the greatest sopranos of the past 50 years, with an excellent, a very beautiful voice and excellent technique. The Kanawa's voice was perfect for Mozartian roles. We have also mentioned in the past Frederica von Stade, or mezzo, with great musicality and homogeneous voice that sang Cherubino as no one has ever sung it later. We all, of course, have also Maestro Francisco Araiza, the Mexican tenor Francisco Araiza, who went to live to Europe after, of course, after leaving Mexico, who understood that Europe would give him the quality of uh, of music that he needed to develop his careers. What do we have out of them three? None of them can be characterized as having huge, immense, powerful voices. None of the three. But the three of them are excellent musicians with a full control of their voices and technique. And that's what Maestro Mozart demands. Moving on with his catalog, then we go for Don Giovanni, year 1787. Maestro Mozart is barely in his 30s because now that it is time for Don Giovanni, I would like to make two comments. One of them, we again find what we suppose to be very immature composer, playful, childish Mozart composing something with the level of quality of Don Giovanni, another of one of the greatest operas ever composed. And if you know the plot of the story of Don Giovanni, you know where it comes from, and we are not going to stop there, then you know that there is again criticism in this Kehel 527, Don Giovanni. There is criticism in this case for Il dissoluto punito, Don Giovanni. Il Commendatore, even death now portrayed in a stone statue, dares to arrive to Don Giovanni's house because he was challenged. This is a supernatural event that Mozart takes for his opera, and that when well performed, it's maybe one of the most memorable pieces of music ever written. The confrontation or the punishment of Don Giovanni by Il Commendatore is just pure, beautiful drama, because everything in Mozart is beautiful. Even when he paints a drama, there is this characteristic beauty, fineness of Mozart that is there, and that's what Don Giovanni brings us. But it's not only the ending of that opera. Of course, there is a good number of extremely beautiful melodies that you may recall throughout the opera, not only solos, but also in duets, as in La ci darem la mano, la mi dirsi dissi, ta da 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 la la la, la 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 la, and the end, the very, very beautiful reply in the female voice. Da 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 la 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 la. Non son più forte, non son più forte. Ta la 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 la. With those very, very beautiful melodies, one can easily understand how all those women fell in love for the heartless Casanova that was Don Giovanni. Of course, there are very interesting roles there, such as Donna Anna, who plays a major key in the plot, and that I invite you to, again, if you don't know Don Giovanni, go and watch it yourself, because it's a splendid master creation by Maestro Mozart. Moving on, we are running out of time. Moving on with the catalog, we have also Così fan tutte, very well known. Later on, La Clemenza di Tito, where I would like to stop a little, like we did in Idomeneo, to mention that in this opera from La Clemenza di Tito, you have one of the hardest arias ever written for a tenor. Of course, I am talking about the Se all'impero, Amici Dei, one opera that demands, besides the homogeneity of the voice, demands the tenor to be able to sing throughout his two octaves easily, with perfect intonation, perfect diction, perfect clarity of the sounds. This opera, this aria, Se all'impero amici diei, you will hardly ever find a recording because a tenor can sing. Some tenors can sing Nessun Dorma, tenors can sing Lucevan le Stelle, tenors can sing other arias as in Bizet, the aria in opera Carmen, the aria by Don Jose. But none of those tenors is likely to be able to sing Se all'impero. Difficult tesituras, different tesituras, and this one being absolutely almost impossible to sing. I think I recall a recording by Maestro Ramon Vargas, also one of the greatest tenors in the year 2000s. Maestro Vargas, I think he has a recording of this aria. If you have the chance, go and look for it, because this is what singing Mozart is really about. And we close this catalog by ChatGPT, opera catalog by his Kegel 620, Die Zauberflöte, the magic flute. We don't need to talk much about the magic flute. Unfortunately, most people think that the magic flute is only about the Queen of the Night and her singing her fa in her difficult aria that we are going to talk about a little ahead. She has two arias, by the way, and then there is also the aria by Pamina, the aria by Tamino. Of course, my very much loved role from Mozart, the baritone Papageno and his girlfriend Papagena, Papageno, Papagena, Papageno, Papagena, pa 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 pa. This lovely duet, Papageno and Papagena, the three arias by Papageno are wow, something I have loved for so long in my life that, of course, the magic flute is of course, you know it, very worth watching more than just because of the Queen of the Night. But let's keep moving because, as I was telling you, we are running out of time, and I wanted to ask ChatGPT to list Mozart's operas, the reasons why Mozart's operas would be difficult to sing, and ChatGPT provides us with 8 reasons that I will share with you now. Vocal agility. Many of Mozart's operatic arias require rapid, precise runs and the ability to manage intricate melismas. Melisma is singing a different note with the same vocal in a syllable. That would be a melisma, of course, more better sung. The singers must demonstrate nimbleness and precision in navigating these passages. I fully agree. Purity of tone. Mozart's music, known for its clarity and transparency, often exposes the voice. Any imperfection in a singer's technique, such as unevenness in tone, can be more evident when singing Mozart than in more densely orchestrated works. Exactly. What I shared with you a little earlier. Fully agree. Breath control. The phrasing in Mozart's music can be long and requires skilled breath control. Yes. Absolutely. The last aria for the tenor that I mentioned in La Clemenza di Tito, my God, when is the tenor be able to breathe when those many notes written by Maestro Mozart? Dramatic nuance. While the music is technically demanding, singers must also be astute actors. I agree, astute actors. Mozart's operas often depict complex characters with profound emotional depth. And the subtlety of this characterization must come through in performance. Yes. Stylistic authenticity. Achieving the correct style is crucial. Mozart's music is classical in nature, which means it requires a balance between expressivity and restraint. Overly dramatic interpretations can seem out of place, yes. Yet, a lack of expressivity can render a performance flat and unengaging. Yes, that's one of the things that makes it so difficult. You cannot overdo because everybody will notice you're out of place. And if you don't are unable to portray what is expected, then people just gets bored. Ensemble challenges. I will not even read it because it says that people, since singers, they need to know when they have to sing their part. It makes it difficult. I mean, guys, that's what music is about. The violas cannot just start playing whenever they want, and the violins as well, and any other instrument that you want to mention, as well as the singer. So, why do we have to say that it is challenging to sing an ensemble? But so that one, no, I don't like it from ChatGPT. And recitative singing. Mozart's operas often contain sections of recitatives. We didn't mention about this the Singspiels, and we didn't mention it because ChatGPT didn't bring it up, but it also it has more to do with the Singspiel, which I think I will give some more minutes of comments when we talk about Don Giovanni and we talk about this the Zauberflöte. We didn't do it when we talked about Le Nozze di Figaro, but we'll do it in the following series when we go back to our Parlons de series. So those are the reasons that ChatGPT provides for the difficult music of Mozart. Then ChatGPT provides us a number of things that can characterize Mozart's musical genius, emotional depth, character development, ensemble work, dramatic range, orchestration, integration of music and drama, humanism and social commentary, stylistic diversity, and recitatives. Personally, I think that ChatGPT fails completely in providing those 10 reasons because those 10 reasons could be used to describe any other composer, and that wouldn't give us a reason of how understanding how to be able to characterize Mozart's style. So that's the reason why I skipped it. Really, ChatGPT doesn't add anything valuable to this conversation. We are skipping those, but we are going to talk about something very interesting, that is about what are the most difficult arias composed by Mozart. And I am going to name, of course, number one, the one that everybody knows about. The one can be heard in commercials, in parodias, in movies, here and there and everywhere, by the Queen of the Night in the Magic Flute. Der Holle Rechtkoch in meinem Herzen. This is the one aria that has a good number of F6. If you know the musical notation, then you know what those F6 means. We call them in Spanish the sobreagudos, the highest notes that a female human voice can sing are included in here a good number of times in Der Holle Rechtkoch. That is the part that is the Holle Recht, very well known and very much preferred. I remember one of the most brilliant interpretations of this aria is in the voice of Diana Damrau, a German singer that unfortunately is not in the best conditions now, but who was a perfect singer for the role of the Queen of the Night. We have then number two, Martin Aller Arten, the one I was telling you from the abduction from the Seraglio. Tan taran taran tan tan taran tan 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 tan, and it is a very long aria, by the way. So that could be, according to ChatGPT, number two. Number three, for Del Mar from Idomeneo, was telling you a little earlier. Idomeneo, almost impossible to sing, now in the hands of the tenor. I would like to mention something here. Remember that Maestro Mozart started composing when there was still much influence by the castrati. If you are familiar with the history of the castrati were also these challenged great singers who challenged any understanding of high notes and breath control. Of course, very sad part of the castrati as well. But Mozart comes and knows about the virtuosity of these legendary singers, and that's provided that those voices are not available any longer. He provides those challenges to the sopranos and to the tenors as well. Another aria, come scolio, in così fan tutte. If you allow me the comment, I don't think come scolio is even closer to the difficulty of Martin aller Arten or the Holoracht. So, well, parto, ma tu ven mio in la clemenza de Tito by the mezzo. Not as difficult as the others, but well, mi tradico el alma ingrata in Don Elvira from Don Giovanni. I would like to say yes, not because it has high notes, but because of the perfection that it demands on this aria to not overdo anything. But a soprano such as Kirite Kanawa, of course, can get away with Mi Tradico el Alma Ingrata. And I think there is also a version by Renata Tebaldi. So those would be two very good examples. Then the other aria by the Queen of the Night, Ositra nicht mein lieber schon. In fact, it is the first aria by the Queen of the Night. Many people do not pay attention to that one, but personally, I like that one more. More than the other much better known. I like it more. The Citric nicht, I like it even better. And then we have from Idomeneo again, Doreste Tagliace. I was telling you that La Clemenza di Tito, at least the aria that I mentioned earlier for the tenor, is not here. And then makes again ChatGPT the note that difficulty really depends on the quality of the singers. But I would like to insist that it doesn't matter the quality that you have in your technique if you are unable to sing these impossible arias that Maestro Mozart decided to compose. I moved on asking what would be vocal qualities to be able to sing Mozart. I will name them per ChatGPT's response, of course. Purity of tone, yes, agree. Agility, yes, agree. Breath control, yes, agree. Evenness of scale, yes, agree. Good diction, yes, agree. Expressive abilities, yes, agree. Dynamic control, yes. Stamina, only some roles. Stylistic understanding, fully agree. Versatility, not really. Resonance, not really. Ability to blend, not. I'm not so satisfied with this list of qualities of a singer by ChatGPT. I would like to wrap up today's program with some comments on the anecdotes in Mozart. He was a child prodigy. Yes, I have already shared with you what my thoughts are on that, if we are not exaggerating or overdoing something only to add to the myth. Composing in his head, well, I think everybody composes in his head. How else can you even compose? Of course, you end up writing, but before you write, you have the idea in your head. So I'm not sure why ChatGPT did this one. Salzburg prankster, we have already talked about his years in Salzburg. We have already talked about him being a very young guy. He met the emperor when he was the age of 6. He composed Don Giovanni in a matter of a couple of weeks. What I mentioned earlier, well, it's good to know, but it does not add to the quality. The quality stands for itself. The Kegel catalog, which I mentioned earlier, the number of operas are in his Kegel catalog. The Mysterious Requiem, the last compounded, it is well known that Mozart didn't want to compose the Requiem because he felt that this composition to death was that he was composing it to himself, to his own death. In fact, he died before completing it. He had a pet, a starling bird, He had financial struggles, which we mentioned earlier, but I would like to insist that maybe it has to do more with his age than in any other thing. He had a great sense of humor. I really think he did. If you look at his compositions, you see some sort of light. Even when the story is dark, there is some beauty, this eternal beauty of Mozart. And there is something here that he called the conductor's dilemma. He was very precise and expressive when he directed. Of course, one can note with the geniosity of Mozart, he didn't like to, or he didn't want things to go sideways for someone who didn't understand his instructions. There's been also lots of talk around his him being a Freemason. According to some sources, he really was. He was a Freemason. But I would like to go back to the same comment there. If you like the magic flute, then why would it matter? Why caring about the Masonic symbols in the magic flute? If you're a Freemason, you already know it. And if you're not applying, you're not using it for any other purpose, it does not add quality to the opera, or it does not degrade it either, that it has or it does not have Freemason symbols in it. So let's not overdo that thing about the Freemasonry. And to finalize, many of you know that he died at a very early age of 35, much similar to what happened with Maestro Bizet, or with what happens with Maestro Bellini, who also died very young. What could have been of the life of Mozart had he lived more? Of course, among the stories is that he was in fact poisoned by a music rival who was jealous of the quality of Mozart that he never achieved. Is it true? Is it not? It just adds to the myth. So I would like to wrap up today's program inviting you to love Mozart for what he was. There are many myths, there is too much idolization, but that shouldn't exaggerate what it is already immense. And the truth is that Mozart's creations are an immense number of operas that gave us some of the most beautiful light that we can have in music. Thank you very much.
We're more than willing to build a community of opera lovers. Please visit our profile at buymeacoffee.com. You can find us as Opera in 1P. Yes, all in one word. Opera, then E as in Edward, N as in No, number 1, and P as in Peter. Difficult to catch, right? You can also find it in the description of the episode. We'll be posting there often, so please join us there.